The next day, after one of the largest Russian missile attacks on Ukrainian territory in the recent times, the Russian regional center of Belgorod also reportedly experienced one of the largest attacks since the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian war, according to Russian media and public accounts. Russian sources described missile hits in the city center and report that bomb shelters, which the local administration encouraged Belgorod residents to use, are not functioning. I do not take pleasure in potential tragedies for the civilian residents of Belgrade, as I have never found joy in the tragedies of residents of cities in Nazi Germany, bombed by the Allies, despite being aware that many people perished due to this residents' support of the National Socialist German Workers' Party led by Adolf Hitler. However, it is essential to remind that the majority of Russian citizens continue to support the aggressive course of Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Putin's success in securing another presidential term seems likely, and not only due to the falsification of election results, but also because the majority of Russians view the policy of so-called land gathering as entirely appropriate. Putin began to rise, especially after the Russian Federation decided to occupy and annex Ukrainian Crimea. Most Russians, even those who seemingly held liberal and democratic views, saw nothing indecent in this blatant violation of international law by the Russian Federation. We constantly observe the apparent dependence of Russians on aggression. Whenever the leadership of the Russian Federation takes steps against other countries, the ratings of Vladimir Putin and his close circle increase rather than decrease. The successful aggressive actions of the Russian army led to the rise of the ratings of the head of the military department, Sergei Shoigu, who was until recently one of the most popular ministers in the Russian Federation. However, when it became evident that Russian forces could not capture the territory of our country and eliminate Ukrainians on this territory, Shoigu began to lose popularity. Let's be honest, Putin does not emerge out of the thin air. The president of the Russian Federation reflects the mood of his population, which considers occupation of foreign territories entirely normal and legitimate from their perspective of life. Those who think differently are a minority in the Russian Federation and are persecuted and repressed by the state with the support of society. What is happening in Russia is so-called patriotic revelry. Putin allows himself to pardon serial criminals and murderers simply because they killed not only citizens of the Russian Federation, but also Ukrainians when they came to our land with Russian weapons. This speaks to the complete and absolute immorality of the country in which Ukraine finds itself in a real existential conflict. This is an existential conflict, not just a war, because a war is for a territory that each state can consider its own, for the understanding of security, for interest. Here, the war's purpose for the Russian Federation and the Russian people is the disappearance of Ukraine from the political map of the world, with the probable expulsion of the majority of the population from the territory that Russians sincerely and confidently consider their own. And here arises a simple question: can such a war end if it is not brought to the territory of the Russian Federation itself? If the vast majority of Russians do not realize that they gain nothing from this war, but instead lose their own lives and their quality of life. We are talking not about just some special operation that the host of the notorious Time program on Russian television or the chilling Kiselyov or Solovyov talk about. It is about real shelling that forces people to hide in non-existent bomb shelters or to bury their relatives. The answer is absolutely obvious. Without bringing the war to the territory of the Russian Federation itself, it can continue not for years, but for decades. If it is a war of attrition, then why only Ukraine should be exhausted? The Russian Federation should also exhaust its economic potential, social opportunities, and security, so that mutual exhaustion occurs. If Ukraine lacks the prospects for the future, that would have existed if Russia had not attacked us on 2022 and had not started its aggression in 2014 by annexing our territories. The same absence of prospects for the future, civilizational prospects, must be for the Russian Federation and for Russian people. This is how historical justice works: unrelenting, harsh, and honest. Historical justice lies in ensuring that the war from the territory of Ukraine is brought to the territory of the Russian Federation, so that the Russian people have no civilization prospect if they wish to deprive Ukrainians of these same civilization prospects. Perhaps only the realization of the absence of civilization prospects will allow ending this war. Maybe this is the cure for Russians from the chauvinistic virus they have been suffering from for centuries of their shameful history. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Slava Ukraini!